Hey, what is up you guys? Sam here, and today we're bringing you the Restoration Druid PvP Basics Guide. Now keep in mind that I am not a rank 1 Resto Druid or anything like that, but I do know a lot about the class itself, and I do watch a lot of streams, etc. So this guide, being the Basics Guide, is mostly for people that are new to the class or perhaps like re-rolling to Druid because it's kind of strong right now. Without further ado, let's step right into the guide itself. So the first thing we're going to be addressing is the stat priority. This is very important in gameplay, obviously, because you want the right stats. If you have the wrong stats, your healing is going to be way below what it could be. So your main stat is going to be haste, second one is going to be mastery, then crit, then versatility. I'm unsure about spirit at this current time because I've not done a whole lot of 3s or achieved super high rating yet, but I believe spirit is somewhere above crit. For those of you that have returned to the game for Worlds of Draenor, you may not know that they removed the haste breakpoints for HOTS and DOTS, meaning that you can just go any amount of haste and they won't give you any extra dot ticks. It's just going to be smaller dot ticks at the end. I don't really know exactly, but there's no certain amount you want to get or certain amount you don't want to go below by any means or anything like that. That's why haste is now above mastery. There's no longer a certain point you want to get to. It's just kind of go haste and then go mastery. So the next part we're going to be getting into is the talents. Now for the level 15 talent section, there's only really 2 viable options, which is Displacer Beast and Wild Charge. My personal preference is Displacer Beast. I believe that's what most people are using. Displacer Beast is just easier and it's a really good escape. For the level 30 talent section, you're pretty much your only viable choices here are your Sarah's Gift and Cenarian Ward. But because currently renewal for 22% of your health on a 2-minute cooldown is not good enough when you have Sarah's Gift for 4% of your health every 5 seconds passively, even if you're stunned. So I've experimented with this, and Cenarian Ward is nice, but when you're being CC'd pretty much the entire game, Sarah's Gift is just doing a lot of healing. I've even opened up SCADA and recorded PvP fights, arenas, and Ysera's Gift was pretty much my top heal. Now for the level 45 talents, all 3 are viable, but they're all situational. First let's talk about Fairy Swarm. Fairy Swarm is very good against rogues, with like a mouse over macro or something similar. You can just keep it up on them so they can't get any re-stealths. Maybe even Feral Druids, pretty much anything that gets a stealth. Disc Priest for their fear. And then Mass Entanglement could be good for melee, but I've never really used it, so I'm not really sure. And Typhoon is good on maps that you can knock people off of things, such as Blade's Edge. Typhoon can be useful in varying situations. So that's pretty much preference and enemy comp. Level 60 talent section is pretty much your main healing sources, such as like Incarnation Tree of Life. Huge healing cooldown. Very useful against cleaves that'll train you, or High Burst, which is pretty much the entire game at the moment. And there's Soul of the Forest, which is very consistent heals, but you gotta be careful because you can be killed if you don't have that Tree of Life. So Soul of the Forest, I would say, is good against Affliction Warlocks if they don't have a bursty teammate. You know, dots, you can get that rejuve going, or the high rejuves going. Incarnation Tree of Life is good in pretty much every other situation. And Force of Nature is just never really usable. And the 75 talent is almost entirely comp based. Like if you're playing with a comp that doesn't have these stuns, you're going to want to be using Mighty Bash. If you're playing with a comp with, I don't know, like a mage with Prismatic Crystal or Boomkin with their Solar Beam, you can go Ursul's Vortex. Or you can go Incapitating Roar, which I'm currently using just because most viable classes at the moment have stuns. The 90 talents, I don't think Dream of Scenarios is useful in any situations, to be honest. But Heart of the Wild is a 35% healing increase cooldown for 45 seconds, which is insane. It's very useful, but it's a 6-minute cooldown, so you have to be kind of greedy with it. You can't just kind of use it whenever you feel like it. Nature's Vigil I haven't really used that much, but I'm assuming that'd be good if you're trying to finish something off, but there's a lot of healing to be done. I don't know, I use Heart of the Wild pretty much all the time. For the 100 talent, I haven't seen anyone use anything but Germination. Germination is just so good. You can have 2 rejuvenations on the same target, and it's not only one target, you have 2 rejuvenations on every target on your entire team. When you're being CC the entire game, you can have those 2 rejuvenations, it's a lifesaver. Now for the Glyphs. As far as I know, the Glyphs are pretty baseline. Like Glyph of Cyclone, the increase of your range of Cyclone by 5 yards is 100% needed in pretty much every arena, because 20 yards is just not enough. 25 yards is still pretty low, but it makes it a lot easier to get that off. With a Barkskin, people like to randomly swap to Restoration Druids just because they're kind of squishy. So Glyph of Barkskin is very useful. Glyph of Regrowth just makes it so Regrowth isn't kind of useless. If it only heals for like 10k, if it doesn't crit, then it's kind of just a waste of a cast, a precious cast. It's so hard to get off these days. One other glyph that could be useful is Glyph of Nature's Cure. It's having those 2 dispels when you need it, but I'm not really sure which one I would swap it out for. Probably Glyph of Regrowth, but it all really depends on what I'm going against. The next thing I want to talk about, and probably most importantly, would be the actual playstyle itself. Now, your main ability is going to be Rejuvenation, which you're going to want to keep on whatever target, or whatever the enemy is targeting, whatever your teammate your enemy is targeting, and yourself. Just keep it on yourself to prevent the swaps, just a safety barrier to have. But definitely want to have one, or at least one rejuvenation on the enemy target. Life Bloom and your second rejuvenation coming from your level 100 talent. You're also Regrowth. You're going to be using, if you can, if no one's near you to kick you, if you can possibly fake cast, which will probably be in the more advanced guide. If you get a proc with it, it's free, and it procs your mastery, which is your direct healing is increased by an additional 14%, and casting your direct healing spells grants you an additional 14% bonus to periodic healing for 20 seconds. Every 20 seconds you want to cast Regrowth or Healing Touch, most often Regrowth, just because it's easier to get off, it's a much shorter cast. And the procs make it free, so it's free healing, if you can get it off. Something I forgot to mention about the mastery is that Swiftbend does in fact proc the mastery, so you don't actually have to get a cast off every 20 seconds. But if you do, you probably get a proc at least once every 20 seconds, so you may as well use it if you can. And for Genesis, that's for if you predict you're going to get CC'd or if you just can't keep up with the healing. And things to note with Genesis is that, first off, it works on your entire raid, or group, arena, team. And if there's 2 rejuves on one person, it does double the healing that Genesis puts out. It doesn't just get rid of one of them. I've tested it, because it looks like it gets rid of one of them, but it actually doesn't, and the healing from Genesis is crazy. Now for Swiftmen, it's basically an insta-cast, pretty much a regrowth, almost, with a 15-second cooldown. You want to be using that as long as you aren't overhealing with it. And there's entirely different playstyle with it if you have Soul of the Forest though, so I'll talk about that in the future. Now that you know the basics of how to play the Restoration Druid, I wanted to quickly go over the usage of Soul of the Forest. It's mostly used for rejuves, just because having that hot hitting for twice as much as it normally would is just crazy. You never want to override it with a regular rejuve until it's almost gone. The only time you're really going to be using it on regrowth is if your teammate is extremely low and you need to heal him up quickly. And that is if you can get the regrowth off. If not, you should definitely use NS or something else. One last thing to note about Soul of the Forest is it synergizes very well with Genesis. It does increase the healing of Genesis by twice as much as you would assume. So you can pretty much top someone with one Genesis just by putting a rejuve on, swift bending, and putting another rejuve on, then Genesising. The last thing I want to go over for this guide is the usage of your cooldowns. Your main cooldowns being Incarnation Tree of Life if you have that, Heart of the Wild if you have that, Stampeding Roar, and Nature's Swiftness. So the first one I want to go over is Tree of Life. So Tree of Life increases the healing of Rejuvenation by 50% and reduces the mana cost by 30%. And Regrowth is instant cast. So it is really crazy for a 30-second long cooldown and only on 3 minutes. The main thing to keep in mind with this is that you can still be stunned and killed in Tree of Life. It's harder to kill because of your armor, but it still happens. So you do not want to wait until the very last second to pop it, because it also takes it global. meaning you can't pop it instantly, do an instacast regrowth or anything. You have to wait another second to do it. But if you can survive the enemy burst without using it, like from off heals from your teammates, a bop, a life grip, anything like that, then definitely do that just to save the cooldown. You never want to be caught without it. But if you have to use it to not die, then yeah, well obviously that's the better option. One thing I forgot to mention was it also makes instacast entangling roots, meaning you can get melee off of you if you have to very easily. A lot of people don't take advantage of that, but it's actually extremely useful to root them. You can root 2 melee in 2 seconds and just run. Now for the cooldown Heart of the Wild. The Heart of the Wild has multiple situations it can be very useful for. The first one being the obvious 35% increased healing done, which is insane. If you can get Heart of the Wild off, and you probably won't even have to pop Tree or Iron Bark, I don't know, NS. You can save a lot of other cooldowns just by using this one. The other defensive way you can use Heart of the Wild is Bear Form. Now I'm not sure if this is still good in WoD, but in Mists of Pandaria you could go Bear Form with Heart of the Wild and just melee, mangle, and thrash and spam Frenzy Regeneration. That's what it's called. Yeah, Frenzy Regeneration, and you can stay alive for pretty much the entire duration. Especially if you have off heals and peels from your friendly arena partners. And the last 1 or 2 ways, depends how you look at it, of how you can use Heart of the Wild is offensively. You can pop it when your team's about to get a kill and just wrath hitting for upwards of 50k sometimes, more like 25, but it's still a really hard hitting ability. Or you can go cat form if you already had some combo points or something, because you're not going to have enough energy to get 5 combo points on Ferocious Bite, but it still does a lot of damage. You can seriously help get a kill with that. Alright, now Stampeding Roar may not sound like a major cooldown or anything, but it can be extremely helpful if your teammates are melee, which Ret Paladins are quite popular right now, and so are Warriors and pretty much every melee DKs. So Stampeding Roar can either be used to get yourself away from the end. Now, that was the defensive way of using Stampeding Roar. This is the offensive way. If your teammates are trying to get a kill, they're close but being snared and being kited, you can use it next to your teammates and they can run at 60% faster towards the enemy and possibly get the kill because of it. Now if you have to use it defensively, it's also helpful just to be near them, just to give them the faster speed increase. It doesn't hurt anything. You're still going to be on cooldown. So if possible, do that, but if not, then just use it anyway. You also have your dash and Displays Your Beast for that too, so you should probably try and save Stampeding Roar. It should be the last resort of getting away, because you can use it offensively. The last cooldown I'm going to go over is Nature's Swiftness. It's only a 1 minute cooldown, and it causes your next Healing Touch, Regrowth, or Entangling Roots to be free, instacast, and the healing and duration is increased by 100%, which means really long roots or really high healing touches. You're pretty much never going to use that in Regrowth, just because Healing Touch heals more. Now it's really rare to use this on Entangling Roots just because it's not really that important, and you're better off just healing with it most of the time. And now that you can't use it in Cyclone, it's pretty much entirely a healing cooldown. But just because it's only a 1 minute cooldown does not mean you want to use it just to top someone. You want to use this if it's an emergency situation. Like if you are just getting out of a stun, or shifting a poly or something, you can't heal at the time. Normally, this is a lifesaver. So that would be the end of my Resto Druid Basics Guide. If you want to see me play live, you can go to my stream. It'll be linked in the description. If you want to see more content on the channel, which would be the next 1 or 2 Resto Druid guides and possibly Hunter, maybe Shaman guides even, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Sorry if I sound kind of monotone in this video. I haven't recorded a guide or anything in probably over a year now. I'm just trying to get back into it. So next video should be better, but hopefully I got my point across. And hopefully I can help some people out that are re-rolling Resto Druid or coming back to the game or anything like that. One last thing I wanted to mention is, if you found that you just watched the entire video and have no idea what I just said, check the description, because I'm probably going to be linking a Google Doc that pretty much outlines what I went over